I'm never coming to the CCCIA laser TV. Expo, we're super excited. Since our speakers and everything that's going on today. Thanks.
Association, and a lot of these members. Again, the first event, we really appreciate it.
Roofing, we are a licensed general contractor.
Years, and after Hurricane Ian, unfortunately, I was stuck denying over half the claims that
I'm one of the owners at Generators by Design. This is Matthew Groot.
we came into this event in moderate to severe drought. That was kind of our saving grace for the first 2 days. Well, now we're on day 3. So imagine a sponge, right? Sponge absorbed everything great on Tuesday, did okay yesterday, and now it's not. At this point, we're just overflowing. I was at Wink from 2011 to 2014, and then I went up to Atlanta after that. I loved it here so much that as soon as these positions opened at Fox 4, jumped right on it. I was like, I got to get back home. I just love it down here, and especially in the Cape. Even though I live in Zone A, I still love it. So, inevitably at some point during every season, we go into at least a tropical storm warning. It's going to happen. Last year it was Idalia, right? Idalia stayed 300 miles offshore, but we still had 2 to 4 feet of coastal flooding. We still saw impacts. We still had tropical storm conditions. So every year we're going to get something. The question is, what do we get? That's why we have to be prepared for every storm and every season. It's the forecast. We mainly look at NOAA, of course, but also Colorado State University. Team of experts there are absolutely incredible, phenomenal. And basically, you've heard it, yes, we are expecting an abnormally active season. So typically in any given season, on average, based upon the past 30 years, we have 14 named systems. This year, Colorado State's forecasting 23. That's the highest forecast they've ever made. NOAA's looking at 14 to 21. And then, of course, your hurricanes will also be higher numbers as well as those majors. Typically in any given season, we see 3 major hurricanes. This year we're expecting about 5. Now I do want to clarify something because I see a lot of it out there. We cannot pinpoint what coast it's going to hit. There are some people are like, I can tell you where it's going to hit. I'm like, but you can't. I wish we could. I would be a bazillionaire at this point. That's why anywhere on the coast has to be prepared. So we are officially in what we call a La Nina watch. And actually just this morning, I was checking in on my data from NOAA, and sure enough, we are officially in zone neutral. So we're done with El Nino. El Nino is now officially done, and we have now transitioned to neutral. What happens after neutral? We go into La Nina. So we look at three-month cycles to kind of get the average of things. And once we get to that La Nina phase, there's a 65% probability we're going to hit that during the peak of hurricane season. So when it comes to La Nina, the reason why we care so much about it is that it really lessens the amount of wind shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Those are the winds that rip apart a big storm. Well, if there's nothing working against it, you're going to see that intensification a lot quicker. And unfortunately, that's when we start to see those more powerful storms. Last time this happened was in 2020. Something else of note that's a little concerning. Central and eastern Atlantic sea surface temperatures, as well as ocean heat content, are the highest they've ever been ever. And this is based upon cores, ice cores, and other things. It's a little jarring, and it's kind of concerning because even those Gulf temperatures, they're closer to what they should be in August in places, and that's a big concern. When especially in Central and Eastern Atlantic, when we're talking about that, when we're already looking at August heat, you're like, that's not good. Okay, so that's kind of what we're up against right now. I want to show you what happened in 2020 because first I'm going to start with my optimism, and then we're going to go pessimistic. So good news first. Just because we have an active forecast doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be hit. In 2020, there were 30 named storms, the most ever recorded. So 30 named storms. Here's a look at all those really fun tracks. Of course, Louisiana got hit the hardest. They took 6 landfalls. Meanwhile, look at this. Out of those 30 named storms, none had a direct impact on our area. We had a couple of close calls, a couple of tropical storms nearing us. That was it. We got lucky. We truly got lucky, especially when you have 30 things out there. Yeah. However, every season's different. We look back to 1992. There were only 10 depressions, of which 7 became tropical storms. Of those, 4 became hurricanes, and 1 was major. That was Andrew. Hurricane Andrew, August 24th. The first named storm of the season. And it was Andrew. So every season's different. Every storm is different. Right there in the background, I have Charlie and Ian. They may landfall within a few miles of each other, They both had sustained winds of 150 miles per hour upon landfall. And obviously, their impacts were dramatically different. So I call it a tale of two Cat 4s. You know, because I remember there were a lot of folks, oh, it's just like Charlie. And I'm like, no. I mean, it's 2.5 times bigger. And so you see on the upper left-hand corner, that's the wind field for Charlie. The red is hurricane force winds. The yellow is tropical storm force winds. And then Ian, the yellow is tropical storm force winds. It extended for most of the state. Obviously, also number of deaths. That was the biggest factor. So Ian claimed 14 times more lives than Charlie. And a lot of it was because of how much larger it was in size, the slow motion of it. Charlie was chugging along at 20 miles per hour. Ian took its sweet time, especially once it made landfall, slowed down to 7 to 8 miles per hour. So that was a big reason why we saw such catastrophic impacts here. This was kind of our biggest problem child for Ian because there was so much misunderstanding about what it was, right? The forecast cone is where the center of the storm is going. But you can have impacts that are hundreds of miles away from the storm center. And unfortunately, a lot of people didn't understand that. A lot of our decision makers didn't understand that. That was my biggest issue, being on television, trying to explain to people that the forecast was still calling for a lot of storm surge, regardless for Coastal Lee and Coastal Collier, even on Sunday and Monday. But we're not in the cone anymore. And I'm like, so then I had to contradict some of our decision makers. It's very hard to do that on television. It's, a lot of times they're like, don't do that. You have to. And I hope after Ian, there's a better understanding of what the cone is. Half the time, I don't even want to show the cone. That's literally where the center is going. So one thing we did last year, we removed the center line. That's, this is the National Hurricane Center. But they're removing the center line too this year. You won't see the center line anymore. And it's because people are too focused on it. Yeah, okay. Let me move my next. All right. It's called the dirty side of the storm. The front right quadrant. And I made this. I'm proud of it because it depicts it so well. So the motion of Hurricane Ian taking its sweet time on shore, moving off toward the north and east. So why is the front right quadrant the most dangerous? Winds around a hurricane circulate counterclockwise. So in that front right quadrant, those winds were forcing all of that Gulf water on shore. And look at that. Exactly where we had 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach, all the way down to Vanderbilt Beach was 10 to 15 feet. And then south of Vanderbilt Beach, including Naples, Marco Island, 6 to 9 feet of surge. I want to point out Collier County was never in the cone because the center was never going to be close. But that was a big concern. And that was just an example of Collier County was never in the cone. And there were some decision makers who said that. And you're like, no, we're still, even if this had hit Tampa, we were still going to have at least 4 to 7 feet of surge. We were still going to get hit hard. And I think that's what people have to understand. So the front right quadrant, where we're positioned, anything that's going to be running parallel, Idalia is a good example, even though it's 300 miles offshore, we were still in that front right quadrant. That's still why we saw that coastal flooding. So because of our orientation, anything that's in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, be vigilant, be aware of it, because we're going to be on that front right quadrant. Most dangerous parts of a hurricane, we know it's storm surge. Storm surge claims about 50% of lives in any given storm. And in Ian's case, 36 of the 72 deaths here in Lee County were directly from storm surge. Obviously, we have heavy rainfall, deep tropical moisture like we have right now, right? With Ian here in the Cape, my rain gauge only got like 6 inches, which is kind of interesting. Thank God we only got 6 inches because we got everything else. But then farther toward the north, parts of Charlotte County, over 2 feet, 2 feet of rain. And then, of course, we saw what happened as all that heavy rainfall drained into the Peace River in Arcadia, right? Peace River rose 26 feet. 26 feet. Obviously, we have high winds. Thankfully, I finally got my roof done. You have little spin-up tornadoes, inevitably, just because you have so much convection, so much going on. Perfect. One thing we say, hide from wind, run from water. You cannot battle water. You cannot Nope, you're not going to win. You'll never win from water. With wind, you know, you can get to an interior room in your house. You can, it's kind of like with a tornado, I'll be like, you know, get to your interior, your safe space away from windows, anything that can punch through, you know, anything that can come through. But when it comes to water, if you are in evacuation zone, if your evacuation zone is called, you have to leave. Okay. Thankfully, you guys are already on your way to being prepared because you're here, you're being informed, which is awesome. So the best thing you can do right now is go ahead and develop that plan. Kind of like he was saying, you're documenting everything that's in your home. You're identifying your evacuation routes. And you want to do 3 different directions. 1 north, 1 inland, maybe 1 across the alley. So 3 different ways. Because obviously you don't want to head to where the storm's going, right? So if you go ahead and have 3 directions in mind, and maybe you have 3 different people you could stay with, or 3 hotels in mind, but you don't have to go far. You don't have to go far. Just get away from water. As long as you're away from water, it might only be 5 to 10 miles inland. It might just be Lehigh Acres. That's great. You'll be fine. You know, as long as you're away from that storm surge threat. It's important to know your evacuation zone. Obviously, you need to know your FEMA flood zone too for insurance purposes. But when it comes to your safety and getting you out, and just make sure you know that evacuation zone. Because that is a big concern of mine. The fact that FEMA and the evac zones don't align, that's a concern. I'm worried that there could be some confusion, and that could potentially jeopardize people when and if we get another Ian. So you know there are a lot of folks going through it still. So there's still a lot of damaged homes out there. And the reason I bring this up is that knowing your personal vulnerability could mean that you have to evacuate for a lower threshold storm, right? Maybe typically be like, oh, I'm fine for Cat 2 winds, Cat 3 winds. This might mean, no, I'm not even sure if my roof's going to hold for a tropical storm, right? You might probably today, there are going to be some leaks coming in. You know there will be some leaks. Thank you. And then, as I mentioned, you have your 3 evacuation routes. And yeah, we already have a lot of anxiety, especially because of what happened 2 years ago. So already having those plans in mind, that's going to help immensely. Good. We can shelter at home if it's safe from winds and storm surge. Again, you want to have those 3 plans to get out, especially like, for example, Burnt Store Road's one of my exit plans. That road floods a lot though. So if we get bands of rain like this that produce 8 to 10 inches of rain, we're not going to be able to use Burnt Store Road. It'll be flooded, right? So that's why I always say to have those different routes. Pets. We love our fur babies. If it's not safe for you, it's not safe for them. And also, don't stay because of them. So that's why we want to make sure that we plan for our pets as well. So again, writing down 3 places where your animals can go away from the threat of water. That's a big deal. Farther inland, there's some great pet-friendly hotels out there. And I actually did a whole story on this on Fox 4. If you jump over to our hurricane page, you can click it on pet preparedness. And that way you don't have to worry about it. One cool thing that did happen after Irma, by the way, all Lee County shelters are all pet-friendly now. They're all pet-friendly. So there's no longer an excuse to be like, oh, I can't go to that shelter. No. Lee County, all shelters are now pet-friendly. As long as they're like in a cage. When a storm threatens, basically, once we go into that forecast cone, keep an eye on things. We're going to be receiving updates from the National Hurricane Center, new forecast tracks every 6 hours. Once it gets closer to land, those step up to every 3 hours. Once it gets really close to land, we start getting data in every hour. And that's usually once the hurricane hunters are going in constantly. So basically, once we go into that cone, stay updated. Don't just focus on what I say at 8 a.m. Make sure you also check in what I say at 8 p.m., right? Just kind of check in a couple of times through the day to know what's going on, how that storm's evolving. That was the other issue with Ian. People heard, say, the forecast on Sunday, and they didn't check in again for until Tuesday. And at that point, it was like, here we go. So when a hurricane watch is issued, that's kind of the threshold. That's when you start putting up your hurricane shutters. Because I get that question a lot. Well, when do I put up my shutters? And obviously, if you need more time to leave, if it does look like we are going to take a hurricane landfall, you want to try to leave earlier. We have some wonderful resources here in Lee County specifically. So I just want to share those with you. The first one's the Special Needs Program. So the Special Needs Program is available to all Florida residents. Every county, though, is broken down in its own entity. So for Lake County in particular, you must pre-register. You have to pre-register ahead of ever going into a forecast cone. But basically, this special needs program is for anybody who needs transportation. Let's say you don't have a car. Fort Myers Beach, you don't have a car. You got to get out. You pre-register now. If you know people who don't have transportation or are medically dependent, right? Where oxygen tanks require anything that requires a generator, like we were talking about. Anybody who, like dialysis machines, for example, you've got to have electricity. This guarantees you getting into one of the special needs shelters that will have electricity continuously. So if you or loved ones are in this scenario, maybe you have neighbors who would fall into that category, pass along that information. That way they can be ready. We have Alertly. How many of you guys have already downloaded the Alertly app? Good. Definitely do it. Already this morning I got one for a flood advisory. It was great. I was like, sweet, thank you. So you sign up for free, alertly.com. You can set it to your location. You can also download the free Lead Prepares app, available for iPhones and Androids. And basically, you'll be getting in for the Alertly. They'll let you know about anything from active shooters to road closures to weather, like we're dealing with severe weather, et cetera, evacuation routes, et cetera. So it's just a couple of different ways to stay informed by what the decision makers are doing. That way you can kind of be the first to know. You'll find out when I find out is what will happen. Every year, we deal with bogus stuff out on the internet, right? Especially social media. I found a new bugaboo 2 days ago, AI. Great. We'll talk about that. But bottom line, you want to make sure you're following actual meteorologists. So we're talking about local broadcast Mets. I don't care if you follow me. I hope you do. But also Matt Devitt, NBC2. You know what I mean? Like, follow actual meteorologists who know the area. Not like Bob, who loves weather and just loves to post. But yeah, definitely National Weather Service, National Hurricane Center, your local meteorologist. We're the ones who are going to keep you best informed. This area is covered by National Weather Service in Tampa, and then Collier County is covered by National Weather Service in Miami. And they're all fantastic Mets. I actually spoke to the meteorologist in charge the other day, 2 days ago up in Tampa, asking why he was taking his time issuing a flood watch. So, very accessible, good folks. This is a fun QR code. This way you can get all the information for our storm readiness. I've also created county by county pages. So there's a specific Lee County one, and it has a lot of this information. Also, pet safety, that kind of thing. All right, final graph. Thanks so much. Let's do some questions if you have any.
All right, thank you so much, Katie. That was such a great presentation. A lot of information there, guys. A lot to think about. But first, you want to make sure that you have our hurricane guide. If you don't have it, Tasha here, you raise your hand and she'll bring one over to you. So in this guide here, we got a lot of really good information, as well as we got the evacuation zone shelters, a little bit about insurance, of course, generators. And then we also have important contacts. So we've got a list of here of important contacts that you want to have when we're going through this disaster. And most importantly, we have a hurricane checklist, preparedness checklist, and that's provided by Shutters 239. So you guys want to make sure you grab this. So the CCCIA, not only do we provide a great resource for disaster preparedness, we have all these companies that can help you with it, as well as home building, contracting, subcontractors. If you need to see our database, you can go onto our website. We have a directory there. You can access that. But we also are on the Emergency Operations Center for the City of Cape Coral. So we do keep very up-to-date information for the city. We act as almost like a chamber of contractors for the City of Cape Coral. So we will have information on our website when it comes to these larger storms that are going to be hopefully not coming. Thank you guys so much again for coming. Again, you need all the vendor information. Please go to our website. Make sure you register for this event, and you will get that. Thank you to my staff and also volunteers. We got Linda over here, and Tasha and Christine. You guys, thank you guys so much for setting up the event. Then we have, of course, our sponsors, Sable Construction and Roofing. Please get with them if you need construction and roofing services, and Property Heroes Pre-Loss Protection. Again, very important service that they provide, very unique service. So thank you guys so much for coming, and we'll see you next year, same time, different place.